souls, and then you want to talk about give a little sneak peek of the When Love Wins.
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to applaud Erica because that
I
was just
know.
beautiful. I was amazed at
Right.
the aesthetics, at the layout, at the attention to detail with the back and everything. So love it, and the spinoffs.
Yeah.
So when I started my writing career, I did nonfiction initially. So my first two books are How to Overcome Heartbreak series. The very first book I share a story of heartbreak, interestingly enough, happened during my college years. And then the second book, I share more for me, but I interview 7 women and 4 men. And it's written so that other people can find their story in the stories of these people. Then I kind of pivot. I took some writing workshops with Lit Cleveland and started a short story. Had never written a short story before. And the very first short story I wrote was Lisa's story, a character Lisa, who's a journalist in New York. She's at a Black-owned cafe called Devon's, and she's divorced and she finds a love interest. She's a single parent. And so I started peeling back the layers of short story writing and infusing spirituality into Black culture. And I found out how rewarding it was. Like I get to talk about 2 of the things I'm most passionate about. Why did I never think of this before? So when I did that, I started writing more short stories, but I took a break from writing and blogging. I was dealing with the loss of my mother and I couldn't write. But what I was doing was I started reading fiction a lot. And in reading fiction a lot, it stirred up my creative gift. And right around the pandemic, when there was like a lot of more downtime in my schedule and more flexibility, I just kind of thought offhandedly, like, oh, I should, write some more short stories and, finish this or whatever. And then there were all these opportunities happening in the Black community after George Floyd happened that opened up spaces for Black voices, Black stories. And there was a particular publishing house that was opening up their opportunity for you to submit your manuscript without an agent. Normally, you need to have an agent when you're submitting it to a traditionally published company. So I was like, and they had a deadline. So I was like, well, let me hurry up and finish this book so I can submit it. I ended up finishing the book, submitting it, but it didn't even qualify for that genre. But I knew that was a sign for me to publish this book. Otherwise, I would have just been sitting on those stories. Like I had them for years. And so I'm like, all right, I felt led spiritually. I need to just publish it myself like I did with the other ones, having no idea that it was going to be a catalyst for a whole novel. And like Erica said, she has these other spinoffs of her characters. That's what's happening with my novel. So I did Stories for the Urban Soul and published it in May of 2021. But I also had started a novel called When Love Wins, which again, we're at Devon's Cafe in New York. And so you get to see some of these characters that were a preview in my short stories for Urban Stories. And I ended up finishing and publishing Urban Stories while working on the novel. And so in the midst of me pushing Urban Stories, I finally have finalized When Love Wins, which is a story of 2 young women with a rift in their relationship. They're cousins. One woman, her name is Natalie. She's like the faith-based social advocate writer. She loses her mother and she moves in with her cousin Ashley, who is like the urban socialite fashionista. So they're very polar opposite. And she thinks she's moving in to get support from her cousin and from her uncle, but she faces a cold welcome. And so there is a rift between them because Ashley has a perceived betrayal that stems from childhood. So the book is dealing with childhood trauma, bullying, parents, absenteeism, mental health issues, but it really infuses contemporary African-American culture with media they listen to, urban swag, clothes, dress, all the things. So it's kind of a nod to the 90s with the Black Renaissance that happened back then, but fun and encouraging and including spirituality and dealing with these topics. So it's been a journey. I've been working on it for 2.5 years, have done a lot of market research, going to New York, staying in Jersey, doing interviews, having beta readers, a lot of editing. And so we're finally here where the book launch will be April 1st, the weekend of my 40th. And there will be a virtual launch on April 1st and then the physical launch on the 2nd. So actually the virtual launch is March 31st and then the physical launch is on the 1st. So that's kind of like all the things that was birthed out from the short stories that I wrote at a workshop in Cleveland. Now I have like a whole novel.